People of Reddit who have been abducted by aliens. What's your story? They just wanted someone to explain the rules of American football. But I've never watched it and they got pissed at me for wasting their time. After the standard issue butt stuff they beamed me back, but it took like 3 hours to walk home. They took me in the middle of the night. I was out feeding the cattle under the moonlight. And then a big light came over me. Next thing I knew, I was driving down the road talking to what I later realized was my father. Or the person whose body I am now in's father. He made a joke about the time being slow, and he had seen an episode of S-Files that mentioned that time reverses when aliens abduct so they can drop you off at the same time as they picked you up. Except I think they mixed something up because I am not in the same body I left in. I still remember my whole life before, but I am 18 years younger in this body, so I don't really mind. But a few years after the incident, I went to see if the farm I once lived on was still there, but it took me a while to get there without suspicion. It's gone, like it never stood. Maybe it was all just a dream. I was abducted outside my cousin's wedding reception. It's all very hazy. There were 2 of them, and they carried these powerful hand torches. They kept shining in my face. They could speak a rudimentary form of English. They kept asking questions about how much I had been drinking. I presume because Earth is a water planet, they had questions about what we drank. Contrary to popular belief about anal probes, one of the aliens kept trying to make me put my pants on, not take them off. But I couldn't find my pants just then. The other alien who seemed to be in charge kept talking about disturbing the other wedding guests, and he tried to abduct my champagne bottle. Their spacecraft had a lot of bright lights on it, mostly red and blue. They took me to their mother ship and put me in a holding area with some other humans they had also abducted that day. The next thing I know, it was morning, and I was standing on the pavement downtown outside the police station. I was very fuzzy-headed, but physically unharmed. The whole experience gave me a terrible headache. Then I threw up on the bus. What's a dishonorable profession? Predatory tow truck drivers. I had a tow truck company break into my car just to remove the clearly visible parking pass sticker that's on the upper right-hand corner of my windshield so they can tow my car even though I live in the neighborhood. Also in the same neighborhood, I've had the same company tow me because my state inspection sticker expired even though I have a 2-month grace period to get the inspection updated. My state inspection sticker at the time was only like a week expired. The local police wouldn't bother me for that. The police told me this when I called the non-emergency number asking questions. Fuck those people. Have you been in an accident that wasn't your fault? People. They convince you that you can sue for lots of money, sometimes even offer money up front, so you'll go along with it. They'll take a cut if you win, but guess who pays if they lose the case? And someone has to reimburse the other side's legal fees. My parents got sued as a part of one of those schemes. There was no actual evidence that they had been involved at all, so the whole thing got thrown out. The complainant was left on the hook for several thousand in court fees. I mostly blame the predatory firm that tricked a 19-year-old into thinking he was going to be rich. A salesman, you're basically supposed to tell exaggerations, half-truths, and even outright lies. If you are legally able to sell your wares, without actually producing what you sell. What movie or show made you think, WTF did I just watch? Monty Python and the Holy Grail. That ending got me so bad. I was dying laughing at how wild the movie was. The killing of a sacred deer. Watched this movie at the theater with my ex-wife back when it was first released. When the credits began to roll, we both sat there for literally 2 minutes, unable to say anything. The first thing I managed to say was, okay. It's a pretty good movie, but it leaves you feeling totally weirded out, confused and disturbed. Napoleon Dynamite, I absolutely hated it. Everyone was talking about how great it was, how funny it was, how much I needed to see it, so I rented it. Sat down with 2 of my friends and just hated it. I kept expecting it to get better, for something to happen, then it just ended. I seriously wanted that hour and a half back. It felt like 3 hours, I was so bored. Incendies. It's a mainly Canadian-French movie. Starts out with the mother of these fraternal twins dying. Their mother has left each of them a letter. One to deliver to their father that they never met, and another to their brother that they didn't know they had. They travel back to the Middle East, where their mum is from, and learn horrible things about her history and the violence she escaped. In the end, they give the letters to the same person. Their mum had a child out of wedlock, was forced to give it up, later ended up in prison. Was assaulted by the prison guard, who didn't know he was her mother, and she had the twins and sought asylum in Canada. Just absolutely wild, and I randomly came across this as a teenager, and it was definitely not age appropriate for me at the time. If you became president, what would be your first actions? Have a water slide built from the top of the Washington Monument to the White House. Overhaul the healthcare system. People winding up in heavy debt over this should not happen. You can become the victim of a crime or accident. Why have to go through a bad financial aftermath also? Sure, you can sue in some of these cases. Winning is another story and can take a long time. Many judgments never get satisfied. Also, make restaurants actually pay their fucking employees so we can do away with this stupid tipping shit once and for all. Replace executive officials with people I trust. Pardon Assange, Snowden, and other whistleblower and journalists. Release classified documents relating to the JFK assassination, UFOs, and anything else I wanted to. Fire just about everyone beneath me and replace them with people that are in it for the common American and the country, not themselves and what they can do for their own gains. Then make it illegal to be a KKK member or Nazi, punishable by prison time, possibly by death if they are extremists. What's a scam that's really easy to fall for? An awful one I've learned about from or scams is recovery scams. Basically, you've already been scammed once and you go online somewhere like Reddit looking for advice. Recovery scammers will DM you and tell you that they can help recover the money you lost for a small fee or with your account information. I guess it's easy to fall for because you're already in a vulnerable place and you don't want to believe that a person offering to help you get out of the first mistake is going to scam you for more money. It's terrible how they take advantage of people who are already down. Ups one almost got me. I order a lot of items to my hoys for work and I got a text message about a missed delivery that led to an official looking up site. When they asked me for my credit card info, I knew it was sus. I reported them. Fake jobs that involve moving money to start off. I was desperate for work and was using Bitcoin. Fake older single people taking advantage of lonely retirees. My mum sent like $20,000 to someone overseas she never meant to help his business. I actually have the real answer. Just send me $5 through Venmo and I'll tell you. What are you comfortable confessing? Even though she left me and broke my heart, I'd take her back in a heartbeat. Very tall women are extremely attractive to me, much in the same way as someone prefers skinny or muscle-white people. Every time I mention it, my friends think I'm super weird, and since women tend to like taller men, I feel cursed. But my hope will never die. I helped someone cheat on their partner, she left him for me. A year later, she did the same to me. Learned my lesson after multiple times of trying to get back with her. Karma bit me, the breakup was rough and I feel horrible for helping hurt the guy before me, especially as time goes on. But it makes me so angry that she got away with it all happy, and I hope karma bites her too someday. My uncle was a KKK clan leader in Missouri in the 80s and 90s. I didn't find out until he passed away in 2014. What is a deal breaker for you in a relationship? Banging co-workers named Robbie in the Applebee's bathroom on company bingo night, not okay at all. Having to constantly message them after letting them know I need time on my own to chill, or being expected to pay for dates with no input on where we go. Unable to communicate emotions or worse, not understanding why they are feeling the way they do and blaming their loved ones, which results in lack of empathy for those who can communicate needs or lack of empathy in general. Total breakdown of a relationship. Religion being controlling. Religion is self-explanatory. As for controlling part, if you insist on having access to my phone or knowing my exact location at all times, that's instant breakup. And I expect the same of my partner to break up with me immediately the moment I become controlling, and of course, ultimatums. The relationship ends the moment you say thing goes or I go. Constantly playing devil's advocate for the sake of getting a reaction or wearing you down instead of having meaningful discourse on subjects that matter to both of you. One is communication and sharing ideas, the other is attention-seeking behavior. What was your favorite movie theater experience, and why? Lord of the Rings, Two Towers. Was about 15, first movie I went to see with friends and without adults. Sat in the front row seats, which wasn't optimal, but didn't mind. Cinema was packed, had one of those feelings of togetherness with an audience I never felt before. Helped that the movie was good too. I thought A Quiet Place was a fantastic movie theater experience. The eerie amount of silence in the beginning was a strange experience. This, paired with the overwhelming sound effects of the theater sound system when the aliens were near or attacking, made for an impressive and immersive adventure. I was 9 when I saw Revenge of the Sith on opening day. I was looking forward to it so much, and I brought one of my close school friends along. I was awestruck. Granted, as an adult, I recognize it has some issues, but that was the movie for me when I grew up. If I'm having a really bad day, I pop it on and the nostalgia of that experience just makes me instantly feel better. I had some of the Lego sets of the movie too. This was just one of the peak childhood experiences for me. Even though I was only 5, in 1993, I saw the first Jurassic Park in movie theaters, and that experience alone made me a lifetime dinosaur nut. I also remember seeing Twister a few years later, and the sound effects were mind-boggling in the theater. Surround sound. Also saw the 1995 Mortal Kombat. That was an intense, high-energy theater experience. Titanic was great in the theater as well. Avengers: Infinity War on opening weekend. Crowd was super hip throughout the whole movie, until the snap. Complete silence from the audience all the way through the end credits, almost surreal given the energy in the theater just 20 minutes prior. What has been your most uncomfortable situation? So I was 14, had this girl I had a crush on. I walked out of school with her heading to the bus stop one afternoon and saw an old lady taking up 2 parking spots with her black Mercedes in front of the school. Wanted to be cool, so I said to my crush, "Damn, look at that old bitch." Crew of men were working on the street doing some road work. The biggest, most muscular gorilla out of the bunch turned around and looked at me. "What did you say, you little asshole?" All of a sudden I got effing nervous. I was just like, "Oh, nothing, sir." Kept walking towards the bus stop with my crush, and we were speculating if that old lady was maybe the big guy's wife or something. Had no idea why this random guy got mad at me just 'cause I said something. Couldn't finish the conversation. The big guy ran after me and started slapping the shit out of me. I was so surprised, I pissed my jeans in front of my crush. With pissed pants, I said goodbye to my crush and headed back to school to grab my gym shorts. Obviously, I didn't want to go home in pissed jeans. Arriving back at the school, the working crew of men started clapping as they saw me. "Hey, wow bro, you just called the mum of our boss a bitch." None of us would dare to fucking do that. "Damn, you are a badass," they said while they were laughing. I'm sure my crush saw that I pissed my jeans, even though she never mentioned it. After that day, for the next week, the crew was working on the street every day, and they all started clapping. Every morning I arrived at school ... so damned embarrassing. Sitting between 2 other guys in a small pickup truck, while hitchhiking late at night. What's something people don't really think about during a zombie apocalypse? Waste management. I see this in other doomsday scenarios as well. With no septic system or trash collection, I see disease being more of a risk than a lot of other factors. Same with injury, sure, there's first aid, but without a power grid to refrigerate meds, something as simple as a cut or scrape can prove fatal. I'm talking about general population, not the people who are well versed in survival and have a limited or working knowledge of how to live outside of society. As for the cut or scrape example, I'm speaking generally, not literally as in it doesn't much to kill people. Changing the scenario a bit. So you have this doomsday bunker and you can't break the seal to the outside as the air is poison. You have 10 years of canned goods and MREs all saved up. How are you getting rid of all the trash? Unless you have an airlock that you can pump out, you're screwed. In the Air Force, we did exercises. Another guy and I had to sit in a single cab Ford Ranger all day. The trash generated from just 2 MREs is insane. Multiply that for days, weeks, years. People with chronic diseases dying from lack of meds after a few weeks or months. Diabetics, for example, that rely on insulin or metformin. I'm type 2, not sure how long I'd last without metformin and a variety of food choices that allow me to eat and keep my blood sugar in control. Months? A couple years? That you'd be living to merely survive with no comforts. It would not be as enjoyable as some people fantasize about. Lack of nutrition, medication, hygiene products, medical care, new clothes or shoes, etc., etc. Wear contacts? Good luck finding saline solution or getting more. Or you take them out to sleep and get attacked. Meanwhile, IT would really suck. People who are 40 plus and happy with their life, what is your advice to people in their 20s? Don't fall for the trap that your life needs to be one long narrative that you should be building. Life is best when it's a bunch of happy moments that just happen to be connected. Don't try to make your life into a novel, make it a book of poems. It's never too late to start again. All in my 20s, I thought I couldn't just restart my career or dump a useless boyfriend or go back to school because I was already on a certain trajectory. Made my choices. Now I gotta make the best of it. That's total bullshit. You have no idea how incredibly young you are and how much time you have to do whatever you want to do. When I figured this out, I found the man of my dreams, had a kid in my late 30s, dropped my entire career in my late 40s, and starting a new one at 50. And it's awesome. And if you are sad or upset or frustrated with life, that's okay too. You have time and it will pass. You have no idea what comes next, and you have so much time to explore. I am still figuring things out. When I was in college, I had the chance to go to Europe, but I passed because I had to work at a warehouse. I picked staying at a part-time warehouse job overseeing the world. When I finally went abroad in my 30s, it changed my perspective about everything and everyone. Go to another country that is far away and different than your own. I was a raging alcoholic in my 20s and thought I would never recover from it. I never found a real job using my first degree or my master's. Part of it was because I was always drunk, part of it was the job market at the time. I went back to school in my 30s and found something I like a whole lot more. Now I'm married, nearly 10 years sober, and have a great job. My point is, if you end up on the wrong path or don't like where you are, there's always time to turn around and change it. Too many people just assume they're stuck where they are and stuck with the issues they have. Maintain your friendships. In 20 years, you will be so grateful for those people who saw you through marriages, children, illness, and health. People who will go for a trip with you, love your kids, remember you as a young person. Friends are essential, but they require work. Don't be alone just because you don't want to be the person who reaches out to others. If you could telepathically say something that all 7.8 billion people on Earth could hear at once, what would it be? You picked the correct religion. I am real, and this is the proof you've been asking for. Then I'd watch the world blow up. Act out a conversation between two people talking about shutting down the simulation, then freak out about accidentally broadcasting the conversation in the simulation. I'd read out some very long string of random letters, like a SHA256, since it will catch everyone off guard. It is unlikely that nearly anybody will be able to realize what is happening for the first couple dozen letters and be unable to write it down. Let the madness ensue as people try to collaborate on what the message was. What characters were correct, there will be conflicting accounts, brute force decrypting it, and what it meant. People who quit their jobs on the first day, what was your I'm out of here moment? Not technically first day, but second day. When I was 20 or so, I got hired to be a temporary floor member for Forever 21 during the holiday season. My training started a week before Black Friday, so the store was already kind of in chaos. On my first day of training, I walked in and the floor manager gave all the new hires a tour, showing us the facility and layout of the store. After this, I was assigned to a veteran floor member to shadow and get an idea of what my job was and what my duties would be. As soon as I was assigned, the manager dipped, never to be seen again. An hour and a half into my shift, my shadowy got an emergency family call and had to take off for a week. When this happened, I found some other floor manager and explained the situation and asked them who else I should shadow. The manager's response was, just do what you can by yourself, you'll be fine. Everyone else is busy. Figured, well, okay, I'll try. I don't know if any of you have shopped in the women's section of Forever 21, but during seasonal sales, they will have multiple articles of clothing that all look almost exactly the same, but with slight differences. Example: a white cardigan with 4 buttons that looked literally the same is a white cardigan with 5 buttons. The best part was these different items were often placed in completely separate parts of the store, and it was the job of the dressing room to return the unpurchased items to the correct section so the employees could put them back on the shelves. Well, these employees fucking sucked. And I didn't know if they were a part of my section or not, so I'd spend a ridiculous amount of time trying to find where they go before realizing, wait, this isn't even my section. I've checked literally every rack, so I'd put it back on the sorting rack and move to the next item. More than 50% of the stuff I was told to reshelf wasn't my section. I just did as best as I could and got ready for my next miserable day. The next day, I come in and the store manager pulls me to her office and tells me how slow I was the day before, and if I want to keep working here, I need to be very fast. I explained my lack of training and unfamiliarity with the store, and she told me if I didn't know where the clothes were in sections, I should come in my free time and memorize where stuff was at. I spent the rest of my shift putting clothes in random fucking places, then never came back for a third shift. Fuck that place and their management. I used to work at a craft store as a cashier, but quit when I moved. Ended up going back a couple years later to make some extra cash, but this time in the framing department. During the interview, they swore up and down I would only ever be a backup cashier because I said I refused to have full cashier shifts. First shift after interview is listed as framing, but I'm put on cash and told that actually most of my shifts would be cash since they'd found someone else for framing. I spent the next 6 hours giving everyone who came to my register 20% off of everything and then never went back. My first internship was at a Brazilian teen detention center. It's akin to a prison, but Brazilian law has some distinctions between crimes committed while as an adult or as a teenager. Teens go through socio-educational measures. I was walking through a courtyard with my supervisor when some doctors came running, flailing their arms and screaming, while officers came running from the opposite direction. I get pulled by my supervisor, who just tells me to run back to our office. These teens, as young as 12, had escaped their block. A few minutes later, an officer comes knocking on the doors of the offices and yelling for everyone to run outside because a fire had broken out. Some of the teens had set mattresses on fire in their cells. I didn't really nope out. My teacher did. She hadn't even been there that day. So I was forced by the university to choose another place to intern at. Oh well. Have you ever woke up in the middle of a dream and the dream was so interesting that you wanted to go back to sleep to see the end of it? If so, what was the dream? I learned I could fly, but I had to teach myself. Woke up right as I was gearing up for the big test to see how high I could go. Forced myself back to sleep, and let me tell why flying in a dream is way too fucking fun. I used to have lucid dreams in my early to mid-20s. As soon as I'd realize I was asleep, I'd start flying or just rising to the ceiling because it was a cool way to test it. Then my immediate thought would be, WHO should I pretend sleep with? And the excitement over that possibility woke me up every damn time. Oh boy, here we fucking go. I had this dream which I still remember vividly, even if I was 9-10 at the time. So I was walking down the street and met my primary school teacher, a cute old lady with the driest humor ever. We talked for a bit and she invited me over to talk and drink some tea. I enter her house, she makes the tea, and we sit in this area with 3 walls made out of bookcases. In between there were these 2 somewhat fancy chairs and a round low coffee table. We talked for a bit, and she starts telling me how she brought me here for a good reason. And she just does some magic or presses a damn button or whatever, and a wall opens, exactly like in Dexter's laboratory. She invites me in, and I see all these people doing a variety of stuff, people being tied to metal hospital tables, in tubes, whatever. Everything had this technology kind of blue. And I walked through this huge like revolving door. I realized I fell asleep a bit after walking, so it must have had some kind of sedative or something. Anyway, I wake up, and in my fear I am tied to a metal table without any skin. I can see my muscles, all of them, move, twitch, and contract, all while I am fighting to break loose from the table. That teacher comes by and says to me in the lines of, "Don't worry, it's all part of the procedure." I see other people around me, exactly in the same state. She releases me after a bit. She gives me this spandex dark blue suit and told me to wear it. After I put it on, I could move like somewhat of a superhero. I could run really fast. I could jump really high. I was very agile and nimble. She told me I am some sort of recruit and that she has a mission for me. After that, I just remember teleporting to someplace by my home, with a gal that I knew by me as my duo, with the task to catch this black invisible morphing dog. I remember aiming at that thing with something, like this bulky black blaster, after which I woke up. You can tell that my young me was very pissed for not being able to be a superhero. Teachers of Reddit, what are some positive trends you have noticed in today's youth? University teacher here, my students put in way more effort than I did at their age. Granted, the system has pushed them in that direction as well, but they typically have a better idea of where they want their career to go and are willing to put in the effort to obtain that goal. By comparison, I and my cohort mucked about a bit more. They seem generally kinder to each other, especially to the kids who are different. When I was in school, the kids who didn't speak English as their first language, or were a little quirky or had disabilities were either avoided or viciously bullied. Today, that seems to be the exception rather than the norm. Not a teacher, but worked the 2 to 10 shift at the local gas station across from the junior high and high school. Kids these days are a lot nicer, more likely to donate to our fundraisers, and they have zero problem for paying for each other's stuff when someone's short. The 8-year-olds I teach really make a huge deal about plastic. We watched the Blue Planet 2 episode with them, and since then they have been so mindful and really want to protect the oceans. You get $1 billion if you can start a massive argument at your family's Thanksgiving dinner. What's your game plan? Announce I'm getting $1 billion and I'm only sharing with my 3 favorite people. Can you guess my favorites? My mother-in-law's Thanksgiving dinner tastes better. You guys are getting paid? Easy, I just sit down and enjoy the meal. My mum will automatically take care of the rest. Call out my mum and sister for joining multi-level marketing schemes. Different ones, mind you, but they both claim to be adamantly against them, yet have the same "this one's different" mentality for the ones they joined. Failing that, I just bring up LGBTQ rights in front of my bitchy aunt. What is the scariest story you know that is 100% true? I would call it creepy more than scary, but my mum's friend had a small house and lived alone. She noticed weird things, a batch of soup depleting faster than usual, missing eggs, damp towels in the hamper when she hadn't used any, extra dishes in the dishwasher, etc. This went on for months. She thought she was just being forgetful. One day she heard some thumping around in her attic and went to investigate. She found some makeshift living quarters, small radio, hot plate, sleeping bag, pillow, food wrappers, etc. She called the cops, who came to keep an eye on the place. They ended up catching a homeless man climbing a tree, trying to sneak into her attic window. He had been doing this almost daily. He would wait for her to go to work, then go downstairs and help himself to food and amenities. The funny part about this story is they got to know each other throughout the ordeal, and the guy was actually very respectful, just down on his luck. She didn't press charges, instead, let him move in, helped him get a job, and he lived in the attic until he got back on his feet. Creepy shit with a happy ending. My mum was driving, and a guy ran out in the road, so she stopped so she couldn't hit him. It was night time, so it was pretty dark out, and 3 other men emerged from the forest around, all trying to use the door handles of her car to get in. She locked them luckily and gassed it to the nearest town. Remember to always lock your car after you start it, because if it wasn't unlocked, who knows what would have happened to her. My friend's boss bought an Audi A4 convertible back when they were new and interesting. One of the talking points was the pop-up roll hoops that were hidden unless you rolled it. A few months after buying it, he got to test those roll hoops out as he lost control and skidded down a steep bank about 10 meters deep. The roll hoops did their job, and he survived with just cuts and scratches from the bushes he'd plowed through. The car ended up the right way up, and he got out, walked back up the bank to the side of the road, then got on the phone to the police to report the accident. While he was standing there, a driver from a car that had seen the accident came over to speak to him. Approaching from behind, the other driver asked if he was okay. My friend's boss turned around to reply and dropped dead. His neck had been fractured, but was in one piece right up until he turned his head when it severed his spinal cord. One of my friends had someone following her home, hiding in the bushes so they couldn't be seen. She booked it to her house, got inside, and he was watching the house from the outside. She called the cops. They come along quietly and got the jump on him. He had condoms, handcuffs, and a knife. When they got his DNA, it turned out that he was linked to a half-dozen rapes in the area. She credits her regimen of running sprints to outrunning him that night, and firmly believes she would have been raped if she couldn't outrun him then. What is the most insane thing you've put your body through? Anorexia. I was tired of being one of the chubby kids, so I just starved myself. Went from like 180 to 110 in about a month and a half. Got to 90 pounds at one point in college and started getting lesions and passing out and shit. Probably not good. Severe alcoholism for a year, to the point where I was drinking straight mouthwash. Lots of hospitalizations. I'm 29 and got sober from alcohol when I was 18 and relapsed when I was 28. It literally started right where I left off when I was 18. Horrible. Alcohol is no good. Currently pregnant with my first kid and realizing how wild this shit is. Organs relocate themselves, stuff starts hurting in places you didn't know existed. Working every day more than 12 hours without a day off for more than a month. What's something that you were afraid of trying, but once you tried, you were completely sold on it? Okay, hear me out. Roller coasters used to scare the living daylights out of me. But when I finally mustered up the courage to give one a go, I was absolutely hooked. The adrenaline rush and the sheer thrill had me screaming with joy. Flying for me. I hadn't flown since I was a kid. I had it worked up in my head that something could easily go wrong in the air. Once I took my first recent trip, I realized how much I was really missing out on. Swimming. I was afraid of the water, then my mum signed me up for swimming lessons at the Y, and that gave me confidence. I currently swim laps for my cardio exercises. Steak. I grew up Hindu, and while my parents never said no, they didn't encourage eating beef. In fact, they said I was free too, but since steak is expensive, they didn't want to pay for it if I didn't like it. And I also was really unsure about spending a decent amount on something I'd never had. Then, one day, my uncle, cousin, and I were going to see one of the Loda movies and decided to get dinner early. They are both avid steak fanatics, and I told them I'd be open to try it for dinner. So we went to Outback Steakhouse, which they thought would be an easy place to ease me into it without spending a lot on a steak. I got a filet mignon, medium rare, with smashed potatoes and asparagus. It was so damn amazing, I almost fell asleep. I'd never had something that heavy before. When I got my first job, I'd go to Outback whenever I got a paycheck and have the same meal and read a book. I fucking love steak. Best steak I've had since then was at Bob's Steak and Chop House. Went with the same cousin. We split the Wagyu tomahawk steak, mashed potatoes, and their bread pudding. Utter bliss. What was ruined by rich people? The price of housing, either renting or owning, it's insane. Worldwide. There used to be a really nice big park in the center of the city where I live. Everyone would go there. It was a nice open space. Take your kids, take your dogs, enjoy the fresh air. Then some people from the rich part of town along the edges of the park decided they didn't like the noise coming from the park and pulled some bullshit to buy it out and walled it off so you couldn't go to the park unless you lived in that specific neighborhood anymore. The worst part is a ton of money was spent when they first bought it building it up, adding fountains and children's play areas, and redoing the flower beds. Then, no money or attention was given to it again, and the whole place fell into disrepair. So now even if you live in the neighborhood, you can't go there because everything is falling apart and overgrown. So the assholes took the really nice park from everyone else and then neglected it until it became a shithole in the middle of the city. So many things, but I'll say trucks. Once upon a time, a humble working class vehicle for people who need to be able to do things themselves. Now they're all luxury vehicles with massive margins, unaffordable to anyone who needs them to do real work. Housing flipping for sure. Looking to potentially buy at the moment, and everything has been fitted with new grey kitchens and modern lighting etc., which isn't my style. I may be in the minority here, but means paying way more for a house and then having the job of ripping everything out. You wake up in your 16-year-old body and the year you were that age. You have all of your current memories and abilities. What do you do with your life? Go outside more. Basically just sat in front of my computer that year. Try to figure out my class schedule, as I've long forgotten what that was. Take better care of my car and my grades. Have the courage to talk to the girls, especially the ones I found out too late who were interested in me at that time. Look at different options for career paths. Invest in what we all now know are sure things and make a few sports bets. Hug my grandparents tightly and spend more time with them. Find and meet my wife 5 years before we met. I need that time with her. She passed away 3 months ago and I'd do anything for more time with her. Get on the right medication. I so desperately need it. It would have changed everything. Lose the weight. Save my grandmother. By insisting they take her to a different hospital. Convince her to leave her abusive partner. Spend more time with my younger sibling and cat. Cherish everything I've lost. You've just won $250 million and it's been deposited in your bank account. What are you going to do today? Do a mass family group text asking them for money. This will buy me valuable time before anyone catches wind and comes running for money. Sleep. I would sleep so long and so peacefully. Then I'd tackle business. Tell no one and act as normal, but certainly eat a lot better. Pay off my debts quietly and make timely acts of kindness to my friends and family. Moonwalk out of my job and spend the entire day making sure every cent of any possible debt I have is paid off. Letting my dad know all his shit is paid off too. And we're taking an extended vacation next summer, so start planning. Nothing. I'm going to sit on my couch and just breath, because for the first time ever I don't have to worry about what I spent today. I don't have to figure out, did I pay the power bill? I don't have to panic in the realization that I spent too much money on groceries and now I'm short for the phone bill. I don't have to feel my heart clench when a stranger number calls that turns out to be a collection agency for something I forgot. I just sit with a cup of coffee and breath, for the first time in 80 years. What kind of drunk are you? I was never drunk. I always fell asleep before. I'm kind of giddy then. If I continue drinking, I sleep, usually 1 hour, then I wake up, and I'm good to go. When I was 20, my friends thought that it was because I drink usually wine or other not strong alcohols. So they gave me a big cocktail with, if I reckon correctly, tequila, rum and vodka plus some juice. It was very good, but as I reached half the glass, I fell asleep at the table. They tried to woke me up, but when I sleep, and they couldn't wake me. I woke up on my own 1 hour and a half after that and was very well rested. I finished my glass more slowly and was able to stay awake the rest of the night with them. They never tried again. I'm a touchy, horny, I want to know all about you, so I'm going to ask super personal questions. Type of drunk. I'm already all of those things on a daily basis, but a lot more when I'm drunk or high. On beer, I just get more cheerful until I get tired or feel a ping in my head telling me sleep now or forever be hungover. On whiskey, everyone I know will know I love them. At 4 to 6 in the morning, something is either going to cause a disturbance, catch fire, or go boom. My pizza is now burnt hard enough to hold up a porch post. I will fall through a table turning off a light switch, but it's okay. I quit drinking whiskey. Whiskey brings out the cool clone. Nobody can handle him. And I always regret having to hear about whatever the hell he did. How and where did your significant other propose to you? I mowed marry me in the grass and painted the outline white. Each letter was 30 feet by 30 feet that I drew out in AutoCAD. Took me about 60 hours to lay out, mow and paint. Talked to a local pilot and took her up in a small plane. Absolutely priceless memory for both of us. Been married 1.5 years now. We were drunk in a pub with a bunch of his workmates, one of which thought he had a shot with me for some reason. So significant. Other thought he should step up. Significant other. You'd marry me, wouldn't you? Me, I suppose. Other workmate, did you two just get engaged? We bought more shots. We'll celebrate 19 years next year. We were at a Christmas party for my dad's company. He is super high up in the company, so we were in a rooftop in Dallas. I don't know if anyone else knows this building, but it was the rooftop of the Statler Hotel. We got a free room that was super fancy. Would never be able to afford it otherwise. But right under a little rooftop area was a whole area with fake grass, and someone had thrown rose petals there. So with the view of the entire city and a professional photographer that just so happened to be at the event, he proposed. It was beautiful. Funniest part was, it wasn't planned at all. He went to go ask my dad for his blessing that night. As spirits were high and everyone was happy, my dad gave him my mum's ring and said that there's no better time than now. The rose petals just so happened to be there. The photographer just so happened to be standing there when he proposed. And we just so happened to be right in front of the best shot of the skyline. It was perfect. My only regret was not getting my nails done because the photographer wanted a close-up of our hands with the ring and my nails were all chilled and ugly. That and not doing my makeup better. But I wouldn't trade it for the world. I was dating this woman long distance for a couple of years while she finished up a university program. Whenever I could afford it, I'd fly out to see her in San Francisco and spend the weekend with her. One trip, when I was leaving the security side of the airport, she was waiting for me. She got down on her knees and asked me to be her husband and presented me the ring I wear for her. I was shocked and overjoyed and, of course, said yes. The crowd in the airport cheered. It was awesome. What once-in-a-lifetime moment did you experience? I balanced the kitchen chair on its back 2 legs and it stayed like that. My mum witnessed it, haven't been able to replicate it since. During a clinical trial, I was the only participant cured of a chronic viral disease that affects millions of people around the world. When I was 17, I was riding my bicycle off the beaten path to fast and hit a huge tree root. I flipped up in the air, did a perfect loop-de-loop and kept going. After a couple of seconds, I stopped as my heart was beating out of my chest. To this day, as I was alone, nobody believes me. I was in a room alone with a dartboard at youth club when I was 8, and I threw a dart straight into the center of the bullseye, and absolutely no one saw it. Went out too far in the sea in Cuba and got caught in a riptide. Like an idiot, I tried to swim out of it instead of just letting it take me. And I wasn't getting anywhere. I was getting really scared when all of a sudden it let me go. It took me way longer to swim back to the beach than it should have because I was so tired from fighting it. I have stood at the top of the Great Pyramid at Chichen Itza and the Great Wall of China. I've traveled inside the Arctic Circle. Once I ran away from home and made it all the way to America from the UK while off my bipolar medication. Those are the only ones I can think of that won't get me on some kind of list. Therapists of Reddit, what was your biggest "I know I'm not supposed to judge you, but holy shit" moment? I was counseling a 13-year-old girl for anxiety and she reported sexual abuse from her stepdad. I called her mum and told her mother I needed to call Child Protective Services. Turns out that Child Protective Services were already aware and the abuse was first reported around the patient's age 7. Mum was aware of the abuse and stayed with her husband anyway. It was a complicated situation and it wasn't. How could she not do more to protect her daughter? Sorry lady, I'm judging. My professor once shared what a patient said that made her quit her job. I didn't rape my daughter, she liked it. The daughter was 6. She couldn't take it anymore. She worked in a rehabilitation center for people who have been sentenced for serious crimes and were forced to get mental help. Really difficult job, and this pushed her over the edge. Here's my most recent one. As the pandemic worsened here in the US and more lockdowns are on their way, one of my most extroverted clients and I brainstormed ways to meet her social needs while remaining safe. The following week, she cancelled her session and told me that she's positive for COVID after attending an orgy, which definitely wasn't one of our ideas. I let out the deepest, most defeated sigh after I hung up the phone. I feel like a lot of the comments saying that they never judge their clients might be working in voluntary services or they've been very fortunate in their client base. Judgment isn't an inherently bad thing. It's how we know that murdering people is wrong. So when a convicted pedophile client told me, "Nothing gets me going like a pair of little girls' worn panties," you better believe I judged the fuck out of him. I continued to work with him and I treated him with compassion and respect because he's a human being worthy of both. I did my job because I'm a professional, but I can't honestly say that I didn't judge him. I judged that he should never be around children. I judged that he is not yet ready for change. I judged that his access to his own daughter should be closely supervised. That's a lot of judgments. Understanding your own inherent biases and how they influence your work is a very important part of training and practice. Opposite side, if that's accepted too. I was assigned to see the lead psychologist of the local hospital as I was severely depressed and had become suicidal. She literally rolled her eyes at me, told me to grow up, and said she could be having appointments with people who were actually about to kill themselves, not me, who was already working with the team. This sent me absolutely spinning, bottling everything up, thinking I didn't deserve help, and ended up in hospital 2 years later after an attempt. When they looked at my records, the hospital suddenly became very interested in any psychological experts I'd previously spoken to, informed them of the above incident. They asked if I knew the name, and I said I didn't, but they had a strong accent. They immediately looked like they were about to burst out crying, apologized excessively, then informed me they had been fired a year ago. No idea how many people were affected by that therapist. The fucking monster said that he liked to dip his Oreos in ketchup and mustard. I called the police, who called the FBI, who called the CIA, who called the mafia, who called Robocop, who called Rambo, who eventually captured this demon who is now on death row. His death sentence has been postponed 6 times because the executioners are too scared to be near him. Rumor is that we have transmitted a radio signal into outer space, calling for extraterrestrial help so that we may rid the universe of this filth. We haven't had any replies yet. God help us. You're gifted 24 straight hours where you and your pets are suddenly able to understand each other and have real conversations, like your old friends just catching up on lost time. What would you want to tell them? And how would you want to spend those hours with them? Write down every single quality of life improvements I can make for you. Let's go find you your perfect food to eat. Let's make sure there aren't any aches and pains you have that we can't address. Tell me all of your favorite spots, what you like, what you don't. Literally everything. I would tell them that I love them and that they're good, and I would explain that I don't cut their nails or vacuum the floor to hurt and scare them. It's just stuff I need to do. I would want to know what their lives looked like before they got to my family, if they can remember it. I would talk to them about funny stories from when they were young, and hopefully they'd have funny stories from when I was young. I would also like to hear what gossip they might know. Because people still talk when pets are around, I would want to ask them if there are ways I've been caring for them wrong, how I can care for them better and enrich their lives more. Are they hurting in any places that aren't obvious? They're getting old, so I just want them to be happy for as many years as they have left. What are some guy secrets girls don't know about? Sometimes we don't talk to people cause we don't want to intimidate them. I might see a girl with a cool shirt on, but I don't want to make her think I'm coming onto her or something. Rather than freak her out that a 6'6" guy thinks she looks good today, I just leave her alone. Especially if we're on an elevator or something where she can't leave if she actually is uncomfortable. Sex isn't all we want in a relationship. I'd rather be with someone who understands me but only does it once in a while than someone who I have sex with every day but don't connect with emotionally and mentally. Some of us are into things like cooking, cleaning, makeup, fashion, etc. It doesn't necessarily mean we're gay. Please don't tell us to man up. A lot of us were constantly told that growing up whenever we tried to express ourselves, so you saying it will often bring up bad memories. Men can be abused. Men can be raped. Men also tend to be more suicidal because society tells us we're weak if we try to discuss these things. No, we don't enjoy being raped by a hot girl, and we often don't talk about it because people will often straight up tell us we're lying about it if we do. As a favor, I worked on a girl's car one time and got pretty dirty. Afterwards, she asked me if I wanted to come inside and take a shower. I told her no because I hadn't brought any clean clothes to put on after the shower. She just kinda giggled. Yeah, as guys aren't exactly too bright when it comes to reading between the lines. When people come crying to us, our first inclination is to fix the problem. Since this is often not possible, led with something along the lines of, "Can I vent for a minute?" or anything that signals to us this is just a time for active listening rather than a problem-solving session. What's your best story that is 100% real but nobody believes you? When I was in elementary school, my brother and I were walking home from school after it had rained all day. He started reaching his hand in all the puddles. I asked him what he was doing. Sometimes there's money in these. 3 or 4 puddles later, he pulled out a $20 bill. Not sure if he ganked it from somewhere else and planted it or it was legit. Either way, I now check puddles for treasures when there are no witnesses. When I was 15 years old, I was in my kitchen, home alone, cutting a pineapple. There was a fly that was buzzing around my face for the past 2 minutes and it was getting really fucking annoying, so just for the heck of it, out of pure blind rage, I grabbed my knife and swung it at the fly in midair. I sliced the fly in half. Sliced it in fucking half. After I did that, I immediately realized no one would ever believe me. I used to build lasers for the AS and Spanish military for minimum wage without any qualifications. Also, I might have built some incorrectly, resulting in the $800 crystal breaking in half a dozen, and another 2 dozen completed models requiring reassembly. I got a call from a police officer telling me if I didn't pay some old fines within a week, he would come arrest me. The total was $267.63. It was about 2 weeks before Christmas, so I was really sweating it. The very next day, I got a check in the mail for $267.63 for overpaid child support throughout the year. Craziest, most unexplainable thing I've ever had happen to me. No one ever believes me. I was 8 years old and my babysitter was 16. My parents worked extremely late, so she often slept over. One night, she decided to sleep in my bed. I asked her to show me her boobs, and she did and told me I could touch them. She also was only wearing a thong. It's probably borderline sexual assault or something, but I didn't care. I was the only 8-year-old that had asked to see tits and received. I looked her up on Facebook recently, and she is a beast. Once, an earwig broke my headphones by pinching the lead. Now, I'm no entomologist, and I don't know if you exactly possess enough pincer strength to break wires, but those headphones were working. An earwig pinched the lead, and then they no longer worked. Reddit, what's the most unbelievable true story you know? Friend and I were playing a game of Pictionary in class once. We were joking that we should pick some random words that were more abstract and have shortcut drawings to make it funny to guess it correct when the drawing was something completely different. For instance, if the word was pollution, we would draw a unicorn. Lo and behold, I went up to pick a card to draw and got pollution. I drew a unicorn, he yelled pollution, got it correct, and the whole class freaked out. Playing darts at a friend's house during the summer. Friend throws a dart, hits a honeybee in midair, and skewers it to the dartboard, and I shit you not, it was a bullseye. When my granddad was a police officer, he was raiding a drug dealer's house. The dealer let his dog go and it ran towards my granddad and his partner. My granddad grabbed a fire extinguisher and sprayed it at the dog. What he didn't realize was that the fire extinguisher was one of those carbon dioxide ones and it froze the dog's lungs, killing it. When the guy tried to sue for my granddad killing his dog, they couldn't prove he'd done anything as the lungs had unfrozen and they just thought the dog had a heart attack. Otherwise, he probably would have got major repercussions for killing something by accident. What's the most interesting story a stranger has told you? A homeless man told me why he was homeless. Mind you, this messed with his head. He was in Iraq, and soldiers would come in the hospital unit. He was a nurse. They would ask him, as they were dying, to send their loved ones special messages. He said it affected him because he didn't know how to contact someone from a first name, but he promised them in their last moments before passing. He said he felt guilty he lied to them. I told him you brought them comfort in their last moments. It broke my heart to hear those stories. This actually happened to me today. I took my 2 young daughters to the park. When I pulled into a parking spot, there was a man who looked to be in his 60s filling his water bottle next to the playground. We went down to the playground and I noticed him walking awkwardly from a distance. At first, I thought he was drunk, but as he came closer, it appeared he was intellectually disabled. He stood at the upper level of the playground staring at us as my kids played with the musical equipment. We were the only ones at the park. It made me a bit uncomfortable at first, but he eventually walked away and began picking up trash and putting it in the bin by us. He made a comment about making the park look nice and walked over to me. He started talking to me about Star Trek and how he is rewatching the original series. At this point, I was just being friendly and just listened. He then told me about how he used to work as a police officer. At this point, I was just being friendly and just listened. He then told me about how he used to work as a police officer. So I asked what happened, and that's when he turned around to show me the scar about 6 inches from his neck down his spine. He said he was responding to a call in a snowstorm and rolled his car multiple times, breaking his neck. Another officer passed the scene and saw his lights in the ditch with the car upside down and him pinned inside. He said they had to bring him back multiple times and he spent about 4 months in the hospital and another year in rehabilitation. He was paralyzed in part of his body, had to learn how to walk again, regain motor function, speech, etc. I sat on a bench with him for about 45 minutes talking with him about his career, past relationships, current issues, etc. Eventually, another woman showed up with what looked to be her grandson. She kept shooting looks our way as he was a very loud talker. She eventually walked up to my girls, who were sitting under the playground, and asked if I was their dad. I could tell they were ready to go, so me and the gentleman shook hands and parted ways. I then walked to my girls, and the woman said, "Geez, I didn't think you were ever getting out of there." I said, "No, I enjoyed talking to him. He had an amazing story," and gave her a brief rundown of his situation. She then responds, "Yeah, but he has to realize that coming to a park where there are MOMS and kids makes us very uncomfortable." In my head, I was like, is this bitch serious? After just telling his story, but realized I had the same thoughts when he was just looking at us when we got there. On the ride home, my daughter was asking me questions. She said that she heard a lot of his story, and he seemed super nice. But that lady was just plain mean. It became a good, teachable moment on why we shouldn't judge people just on their appearance or differences, but don't go talking to strangers. I was doing some work on a native reservation, which meant we had to hire some local help. One of the guys just seemed like a bit of a bum that would pick up any job he could get. Didn't really talk to the guy much, but one of the days we're in close proximity, and he starts telling me some really outlandish stuff. He says that he used to be a high-standing chief and that he had made a considerable amount of money doing so, but got into some trouble with the law and lost his title or status as such. He told me that before his funds could be seized hundreds of thousands of dollars, he threw it in a waterproof container and threw it in a lake. He said he had to serve a few years jail time, and when he was released, a bridge had been built over top of where he threw the money. I assumed this was all just made up, or he was delusional. Turns out the part about him being a disgraced chief was actually true. After I had gone home and looked him up, I wonder if it ends there or if he actually did throw the money in the lake. On one of my solo backpacking trips, I stumbled upon this British chap who was in the same hostel as I was. He had been living illegally in Tel Aviv for a few months after having gotten there from across different countries. He told me of a time when he lived in the favelas of Ohio and got involved in some gang stuff and got caught by the cops peddling cocaine. He managed to get bail on the condition that they held back his passport. He then went to the British embassy where he was advised to cross the border to Argentine since they couldn't prevent him from being charged and jailed for a long time. He escaped on foot and took buses and walked across the border, got himself a new passport and fled to Canada, where he lived for a few years. It has been a decade since I heard this story, so some details might be fuzzy. For all I know, he may have embellished most of it. But that breezy evening atop the terrace hostel along the Mediterranean was a memorable time for sure. What is one thing you are comfortable admitting you are addicted to? Being alone, even though I enjoy the presence of others, I am quite addicted to the calm feeling of being on my own and doing whatever I please. Being lazy. Never liked going to school. Never liked working. Everything is a chore to me. I can spend all day just lying around doing nothing. I'd prefer a life of not doing anything, but unfortunately you have to do stuff to survive. Hanging out at home. I have to force myself to leave the house for plans not related to errands or walking the dogs. I've got a work from home job, video games, streaming services, delivery services, books, cute dogs, a hot tub, a stocked kitchen, accessibility tools. I'm deaf, weed, and alcohol. Why would I want to leave my house? Dependence on knowledge. I am a very inquisitive person and I am eager to learn something new every day. However, this addiction sometimes plays a bad joke on me. This addiction often makes me burn out mentally, and when I don't do anything, I feel useless. Staying up late for no apparent reason, it's taking a serious toll on my mental health, and yet I can't seem to stop. Maybe my circadian rhythm is fucked, but it seems like I do this completely by choice. What is your favorite poverty meal that you still eat regardless of where you are financially? Sailor toast. You make a hole in the middle of a slice of bread and lightly butter both sides. Then you put it in a frying pan on medium or medium to low and crack an egg into the hole. When the egg white starts to look opaque, you flip it over. A little cracked pepper on top and you're good to go. You don't even need a fork. Taco Bell. At age 60 and able to afford more or less whatever I want for lunch, I still drive through about one a month for 2 crispy tacos, 2 bean burritos, and a Diet Pepsi. It's the same order since I was a teenager. Fried egg sandwich. When you're broke, it's 1 egg on toast and possibly mayo or hot sauce if that's your luxury, and when you're comfortable you can add avocado, seasonings, an extra egg, hell maybe even some jam if you're so inclined. Humans discovered fire, and then they fried an egg and slapped that thing on toast. Always been a picky eater growing up, But ever since I was young, I'd hang a paper plate with, like, 3 layers of paper towels, then fill the plate up with pepperoni. If you cook it in the microwave for like a minute and a half, they crisp up, all the grease absorbs into the paper towels, and you have what I call meat chips. Everyone looks at me like I have 3 heads, but they have one and are totally into it. Roast potatoes, filling, tasty and easy to cook when I'm low on energy, about 5 minutes active prep time in total, and it's easy to cook in larger amounts. Magic tip for those who don't know how to cook perfect roast potatoes. After you parboil them, instead of spicing them on the tray, put them all in a large bowl. Add your oil, depends on my finance, but I love to use a drizzle of olive oil, and your spice mix, I usually use a mix of powdered coriander, chili, pepper, salt, generic mixed herbs, and a spoonful of brown sugar syrup. Cover the bowl. I generally just use a plate that I hold down with my thumbs and give it a good 30-second shake. Perfect spice and oil diffusion, and the shaking impact soften up the potatoes to allow for a better roast. Same trick works with oven chips, fries, and other roast vegetables. The accompaniment usually reflects the depths of my pockets. When I'm flying high, they'll be sided with a nice steak. When I'm broke, maybe just some gravy.